All right, guys, tonight we're talking about joy. Is that good? I tried. This will bring you joy. I forgot the remote, so you guys can sit tight. All right, welcome. If you didn't get the material, there's some in the back if you want to raise your hand if you want the material. I made it myself. No one wants it? One over there, one over there. Thank you. Sweet. All right, we're talking about joy. Eric's out of town, so that means we can start the pleasant emotions. Woohoo! Joy. Here's some pictures to get you in the mood. Good? Okay, good. Think about these questions as we start. What brings you the most joy? What brings you the most joy? And would people describe you as a joyful person? Think about that. The goals of this class is to develop these self-awareness, these snapshots of ourselves. What did I do in that moment? What led me to do that? Why did this emotion play out in this way? Also process these emotions through Scripture. What does the Bible say? How to use my anger, how to use my joy, how to use sadness. And cultivate Christian-like emotional responses. Outline of the class, we're going to define joy, and then we're going to talk about sources of joy. So defining joy and sourcing joy. Here's our definition of emotions we've been running with. The emotions are more than feelings. They tell us about what we value and what we believe, producing desires and inclinations that affect our behavior. Emotions were given in order to energize behavior and were intended by God to be a catalyst for action. Here's our little graph. Beliefs and values and perceptions will change your emotions, and that will produce actions. For example, if a kid values the ice cream cone and they drop it and it goes everywhere, due to that value and that being taken from them, they'll have sadness, leading to a crying action. Before we get into joy, we've been highlighting these as pleasant and unpleasant emotions. That's different than wrong and right and wrong emotions. We'll just start with this, since this is the first class on what's our word? Positive emotions, pleasurable emotions, pleasant, there it is. Since our first class on pleasant emotions, let's talk about pleasant versus unpleasant. Are there right and wrong emotions? What do you think? We got one head shake, no. One head shake, no. Head shakes, no. Are there right and wrong emotions? Anyone a head shake, yes? There are right and wrong? What do you guys think? Hatred, that'd be a wrong emotion? Okay, anything? Depends on the situation. Envy? Envy's wrong emotion. Okay, Amy thinks there's wrong responses, but not wrong emotions. So you would think that me being angry isn't wrong, but then me killing someone, that would be wrong. Okay. That's good. Yes, sir. Yeah, there's beneficial emotions and harmful emotions. That's good, and we need both in this life. Any other thoughts on this, right and wrong emotions? Cool. Okay, the answer is, or my answer is, emotions are neutral. They're like the channel that our beliefs flow through into actions. Like imagine that chart as was one arrow that went all the way through. I'll show you some examples of this from the Bible. Pleasant versus unpleasant. So pleasant emotions can lead to good things, righteous actions. For example, it says in Luke 19, Zacchaeus had joy, and that led him to hospitality with Jesus. And of course, we know that unpleasant emotions can lead to evil actions. Think about Cain. He had anger, and then he murdered his brother. But we also see in the Bible pleasant emotions leading to evil actions. David and Bathsheba. His pleasure when he saw Bathsheba, he felt something pleasant. He felt joy. He felt good things. But what did that lead him to do? Murder, steal, adultery, bad things. And we also see unpleasant emotions lead to righteous actions. Jesus had sorrow, but he went on to obey. How are we feeling? Make sense? Good. So what's the point? As we get into this section of pleasant emotions, they need to be stewarded. They need to be focused on just as much as the bad ones. We're always talking about controlling our anger, controlling our sadness, controlling our grief. We also need to control our joy, focus our hope. See what I'm getting at? Cool. So we had that chart, beliefs, emotions, actions. The important thing is our beliefs, our perspectives. Think about David. Him having joy when he saw Bathsheba wasn't wrong, just the feeling of joy, but why was it wrong? Because it wasn't his wife. So his belief of that's mine, I want that, the root belief led to a neutral emotion, but it led to bad actions. So second half of the class, we're going to talk about the sources, the beliefs. Where should our joy come from? Because that leads to our emotion, that leads to our action. But first, let's define joy. Does anyone have a definition for joy they want to share with the class? In your own words or from Google? Or read your handout. Positive, happy feelings. I love it. A feeling of great pleasure and happiness. You're an Oxford man. I see that. Here's another definition I really like. This is from APA. It says that joy is the feeling of joy may take two forms, passive and active. Passive joy involves a tranquility and a feeling of contentment with things as they are. Active joy involves a desire to share one's feelings with others. Both forms of joy are associated with an increase in energy and feelings of confidence and self-esteem. So we have two types of joy. One is like this inner joy where you feel good. You have this contentment inside of you. And then you have your active joy. You're rejoicing, you're dancing, you're singing. What does this mean for us? One, we're told to rejoice always. We're told to have joy. It might not always be like that. It can still be in here. However, if our joy in here never gets out at all, do we really have that joy inside? Joy isn't a personality type, as it is for some people, or maybe it's not so easy for some people, but that inner joy and showing joy when we need to is a mindset. It's a perspective that we need to have. All right, this is joy. It feels good. It's more than happiness. It's inner, it's outer. Here's what the Bible says about it. The Greek word chara refers to a deep-seated spiritual gladness, often resulting from God's work in a believer's life. Not dependent on circumstances, but dependent on God. That's like the inner joy, and we also have an outer joy word, agalasis, or something like that. A highly expressive, exuberant joy, often in response to God's works of deliverance. Any thoughts on what joy is, or any misconceptions? Anything that you all want to bring up before we look at what should bring us joy, our sources of joy? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I know it's been discussed before, but I feel it still needs to be brought up. So, what is the difference between joy and happiness? Because every time happiness gets brought up, and you can even see happiness is a description of joy with the Oxford definition. But every time happiness kind of gets brought up, it kind of gets put down. So, what is the difference between joy and happiness in this situation?
That's a great question. Ian asked, what is the difference between joy and happiness? Who wants to answer? Yes, sir.
So happiness is when something happens
Yeah, Wes says happiness is from things that happen to you, but joy is something that you can have even if you're feeling sad. So even if you lose that outward joy, you can still have an inward joy. Travis, you want to add to that?
I mean, happiness has a temporary aspect to it. Joy has more permanence because it's not as dependent on the immediate circumstances or environment.
Yes, Travis said that happiness is temporary, but joy is permanent. And permanent? Is that right?
It has a permanence. Not
Permanence.
necessarily permanent, but more long lasting.
Got it. I love learning new words. That's great. Yeah, Ryan?
I was just going to say, I was also, 3 John, verse 3, talks about, or verse 4 says, I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in faith. It's different than saying, I'm happy that my kids are, that's something, okay, yeah, they're doing it, but I have no greater joy. That brings happiness magnified. To see my kids worshiping, that's biblical to see that brings you joy.
Yeah, it's a deeper happiness. Like when you see your kids walking to faith, it's not like same happiness level as like eating a chili dog for me. It's like it's deeper, a better joy. Anything else on happiness versus joy? Yes, sir.
Happiness for me could be something here in the flesh, or it could be happy because of something spiritual. But joy, true joy, is based on the spiritual. It's based on, I'm going to see God's face one day and He's going to be pleased with me. That's joy. Because nothing can stop it.
Yeah, Mr. Ross says that happiness is based on physical things, joy based on the spiritual. Yes, sir.
Hebrews 12:2. It's joy that Jesus was able to endure, the joy that was set before him. It doesn't say happiness. And so, like Mr. Ross said, joy has a more spiritual aura. And yeah.
Andrew says joy has a more spiritual aura. That's a good quote. Anything else? Cool. All right. It's kind of semantics, but I think joy and happiness are the same thing. How much it is deeper and how long it lasts depends on what you put it in. That's what I think. But joy and happiness, good stuff. Does that satisfy our answers? We have that good? Awesome. So, it's important that we put our joy in the right thing. We agree? Let's talk about things we can put our joy in. First one is rejoicing in the Lord. Here's a verse, Habakkuk 3:18. Yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will take joy in the God of my salvation. And Philippians 4:4. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say rejoice. Two quick things before we open back up discussion. In Habakkuk 3:18, joy is a decision. Proverbs 23:19 says we can direct our heart. We do have some control over our emotions. I feel like a lot of society says it's like an uncontrollable thing. It is hard to control for some people. Some emotions are harder to control than others. However, you can influence your emotions through your thinking, through your decisions. Habakkuk says, hey, I will rejoice in the Lord. And Habakkuk here and Paul, they didn't have the best situations. If you're in Habakkuk chapter 3 right now, looking at it, before he's talking about how barren all the farmland is, how there's no tree bearing fruit, but I'm going to rejoice in the Lord. Paul in Philippians, where is he at writing this letter? Prison. But he's saying rejoice always. True joy in the Lord isn't a denial of the difficulties, but a declaration of trust. Let's talk about this first. We hear this verse, Philippians 4:4. It's all in TJ Maxx decorations and Pinterest. But is it actually possible to rejoice in the Lord always?
Paul said he talks about being abased and abound, and he's had it rough, but he doesn't come out and say, quote, rejoice in the Lord, but you can tell by the attitude he's rejoicing in the Lord. He still has joy, even though he's abased, even though he's had hard times. So even though you're down over your luck and things are terrible, Paul or Job still, by their attitude, rejoiced in the Lord.
Yeah, LR said that Paul and Job, they found contentment in what they had, and they both went through some pretty terrible things. Any other answers to this? Can we always have joy? Yes, Ryan.
I think the answer is yes, but we choose not to.
Ryan thinks the answer is yes, but we choose not to. Do you want to keep going, or is that good?
I mean, it's a choice to have a good, positive attitude. It's a choice, like, I have to make every day to have a good attitude about what I have to do for work or what I have to do for this or that. Like, I can choose. I get to choose my outcome. I get to think how I want about certain situations. And we can, yes, rejoice in the Lord always. We choose not to.
Yeah, Ryan says we have the decision to. So if something bad happens to us, we can say, hey, I'm going to choose, even though work is really hard right now, still going to rejoice in God. But often we say, no. Yes, sir, Colbert.
Just going down a little bit more, Philippians 4, this doesn't really have to do with the question alone, but in 10, Paul is telling them, I rejoice greatly in the Lord, and because of their concern for him. And then he goes on saying, for I've learned to be content with whatever the circumstances. So that, he gives it both those meanings, two meanings, being content with whatever you have, and also rejoicing, being joyful out loud, expressing it as well.
Yeah, Colbert's bringing up that connection between contentment and joy. What usually takes away our joy, our happiness? It's what happens out here. So if we can just stop the noise and be content with whatever's going on out here, all this shouldn't affect our joy. Good connection. Yes, ma'am.
Well, as Alice was saying while they were in jail, because what you just said, they didn't let outward evict them because they had joy in them.
Yeah, Paul and Silas are singing in jail, focused on God. And again, it's not a denial of difficulties, but we're trusting God. So how do we balance that? How do we not just completely ignore bad stuff happening and still have joy? When someone in your life is really sick, when you lose a loved one, how can you still, maybe have the grief or do what needs to be done, but still have that joy in the Lord always? Amy?
You talked about like stuff happening outside of you disrupting your joy, but even sometimes it's what's happening inside of you, that anger that you might have that you have unresolved. And in Genesis, when Cain is about to kill Abel, God calls that out to him. He says, if you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin lies at the door and its desire is for you, but you should rule over it. Like, we're supposed to rule over our emotions, and sometimes it is sinful when we let them go, and it leads to sinful actions. And God does not ask us to do something that we're not capable of doing.
Yeah, we can have like this storm, this confusion of our emotions inside, and like God told Cain, rule over it. Great. Yes, sir.
For me, it comes down to trusting in God. Guys on death row, some of them have
Did the crime, but you're never gonna break it because they not gonna admit it. So that's the same thing a Christian gotta do. He's gotta study the Word of God, he's gotta pray, and he's gotta look at all those beautiful Bible examples of people that was in tough situations, didn't give it up. Hebrew boys, well, I don't disrespect you, King, but if you gotta throw me in there, God is able to deliver me out of there. But if he don't choose to do that, guess what? I'm still serving him. That's what we have to do.
Yeah, Mr. Ross emphasizes the importance of looking at people suffering in the Bible, but still choosing joy. And that leads to a good question we need to talk about. Great conversation, great stuff. Rejoice in the Lord. How do we actually, tangibly, practically, what actions can we take? What things can we think? What are real ways we can rejoice in the Lord? We hear it a lot, but how do we do it?
Well, one thing I've studied, I was looking at some studies recently, and I number one thing that men want in life is peace. And joy has peace. That doesn't mean that the whole world's not going crazy around you. You know, like Job or Paul, or it means they understand peace. They understand there's peace in the Lord. That having belief in the Lord and relying on the Lord and trusting in the Lord, there is peace there. When a man comes home from work and he has a wife and children, he wants peace when he walks in the door. He doesn't want chaos. He wants peace because that's his shelter. That's his go-to place. And a man wants that. So in order to have joy, we got to have a amount of spiritual peace. We can't be in a spiritual warfare. And we need to turn to God for that.
LR says we need to get peace from the Lord. So taking time to have peace with him, focusing on that, prayer. Think about that. It's a really good thing. What else? Practical ways to rejoice in the Lord. Aaron?
Realize how temporary life is without reading Ecclesiastes continuously. Because that'll make you go the other way.
Yeah, Rick, remember life is temporary, so you remember there's a better one after it. Hannah, did you have something?
Being thankful, just always having gratitude for everything God has done.
Yeah, being thankful is a great thing. I would add, to make it even more practical, write it down. Write down things you're thankful for. That'll put what you have in perspective, and knowing it all comes from God. Yes, sir?
God is eternal, He doesn't change, and we can have confidence in that. It's easy to have confidence in somebody or something or someone that we know He's not going to change and He keeps His promises. We can place our confidence in Him.
I love that. We can have constant joy in God because God is constant. That's wonderful. Raise your hand if you have joy in your spouse. All right, good marriages. You have joy in them because why? You have a relationship with them. Do you have joy in like some celebrity or athlete or president or something? No, because you don't know them. The better your relationship with God is, the more joy He will bring you. We got to get God off the paper and into our life. He's more than just words. He's a being. He's a creator of the universe, and we can have a relationship with Him. This is a kind of a, what's a question you don't answer? Theoretical? Rhetorical. Thank you. You are on the words tonight. Rhetorical question. Do we rejoice in the Lord or just in His blessings? Don't answer it. It's rhetorical. Comment?
I was just going to say, in James, it says, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, because you know that it produces patience.
Yeah, we can have joy even in trials because trials will strengthen us. They make us better. I love it. Great. Let's look at another source of joy. Rejoice in salvation. Here's a verse, Psalm 51:12. Restore unto me the joy of your salvation. This is after Psalm 51 is written after David and Bathsheba stuff happened. He's saying, restore unto me the joy of your salvation. Jesus tells the audience of the people He sent out in Luke 9, rejoice that your names are written in heaven. He's going to say, don't rejoice in all these miraculous gifts you have. Rejoice because your name is written in heaven. Do you remember what you felt like the moment after you were baptized? The rest of that night, the rest of that day? Anyone want to share what they felt like right after they were baptized? Walking on cloud 9. Yes, ma'am.
The most comfort, because you know in that moment that if He were to come back, that you would be with Him forever.
Comfort knowing that if Jesus came back at any point, you'd be ready. I saw a hand over here, I think. Yes, sir.
I was baptized on a cold night in a little church building with no heat, and I froze to death, and I was relieved that I did it.
Yeah, so freezing water, but relief. Ah, relief. Any other good feelings?
I remember I had a lot of anxieties, and I just remember at that moment that everything was all peaceful, no doubts, no anxieties, and just joy.
Peaceful, no doubts, joy. These are wonderful feelings. You know what's crazy? Some of the people that answered were a little older than I am, maybe a lot older. But you know what's so amazing? They still remember that feeling. Do you remember what it was like the second after you were baptized? That was the joy. That's when you realized what you were doing. I'm saved right now. I'm cleansed. I'm free. I have confidence. Often we can lose this joy. We forget it. We get so distracted by the world, we fall back into sin. But you know what Psalm 51 teaches us? David, adultery, murder, everything, he prayed to God, restore the joy back. We can lose the joy of our salvation, but we can get it restored. We can have that restored. If you haven't felt that, if you forgot what it's like, pray to God. He can restore that joy, that feeling that we can have. But often there's a lot of things that can stop it. Here's a case study. Boom. Anna has followed Jesus for years, but lately she feels weighed down by guilt. Every mistake she makes, every harsh word, every selfish thought lingers in her mind for days. She replays failures constantly, convincing herself that God must be disappointed in her. Even during worship, she feels unworthy to sing. Over time, her joy in salvation fades, replaced by quiet shame. What does Anna's guilt reveal about where she's placing her focus? What do you guys think? She's focusing on herself and everything she's doing wrong and not what God did right. And she's also forgetting her decision that she is saved. What are some things, examples of things that can take away our salvation? We mentioned a few of them. Any ideas? Yeah.
I was just thinking of, like for this example, Anna, she's put God in a box. She's kind of outlined what his strengths are. And I was thinking of Naaman. We just got done talking about Naaman, and in 2 Kings, where he wasn't about to get leprosy. He had leprosy. He literally had a flesh-eating disease, and he was told that all he had to do was go dip in the Jordan 7 times. That wasn't great enough for him. And I think that's us as Christians today. Like, we want to do great things. We want to have all these miraculous things happen to us. We put God in a box and say that, he's not able to save me, I'm too far gone. Like, no, God can save us, and that's sourcing our joy from him and understanding that we are the ones that put the restrictions on ourselves, not giving God the ability to what he does best, and that is heal us and save us from our sins and make us whole again.
Yeah, Ryan says we can have this restriction of ourself where we think we're too far gone, or we want to do something big and miraculous in our life, but it's really the simple stuff. Notice, I'll come to this hand in a second. Psalm 51, restore unto me the joy of your salvation. God's salvation for us. If you are putting your joy in your own salvation, whatever you think is going to save you, you're not going to have true joy. If you're putting your joy in your money, because that's going to save you from financial troubles, you're not going to have joy. You think your relationship is your savior, you're not going to have joy. Make sure that it's in God's salvation. Hand over here.
Anna reminds me of Peter. As long as he kept his eyes on Jesus, he was walking on water. As soon as he took a walk, he started sinking, and that's what she's doing in that. Okay.
Yeah, Peter, eyes off Jesus, sunk. Eyes on Jesus, walked on water. Same thing here. Except for baptism, you want to go in the water. Joy in salvation. This is something that In our culture, we can lose it after time, and you're not going to feel like every single morning like you just got baptized, but we can reinstill that feeling, and we need to do that. It's great. Think about what God's done for you. Do not forget the joy of your salvation. Let's talk about another one, trials. This was brought up earlier. Here's a verse, James 1, 2 through 3. It says, "Count it all joy when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness." That's James 1, 2, 3. Here's 1 Peter 4, 13. "Rejoice insofar as you share Christ's sufferings, that you may also rejoice and be glad when his glory is revealed." So one thing, we mentioned this earlier, we can have joy even during trials, knowing that the trial we are in will strengthen us. It'll make us better. The 1 Peter 4:13 verse, similar things in Hebrews 12:2, talks about suffering for Christ. When you are suffering because you are a Christian, he says take joy in that, because if you're suffering for Christ and with Christ, one, you're not alone, you're sharing his suffering, and two, if you share in his suffering with joy, you will also share in joy when he comes back. Is it reassuring that someone has also suffered what you've suffered before? Is it reassuring? Think back to your college days. I'm going to do a college example. Like when there's a really hard test, it's kind of nice when everyone has that hard test. You have someone to talk to about it, someone to get through with it. Jesus has gone through trials that you go through, especially if it's suffering for the faith. How would these trials produce steadfastness and be resolved when Jesus returns? So, two things. One from that first verse, trials make us better. So I'm going to put up some trials, and I want you to think about how could that make you better in your faith? How could that make you a stronger Christian? And two, how will that trial be resolved? What can we think about during that trial that we can have joy? Here's one. A boss at work constantly makes fun of your beliefs, constantly makes fun of Christianity and your church and Jesus. How would this produce steadfastness? How would this make you better? And how would it be resolved? What reassurance could you have? Yes.
I feel like this would make us better if you're constantly having someone who's asking you questions or making fun of you. It gives you an opportunity to talk to someone repeatedly and come up with new arguments, and more than likely you're going to have to go do more research based on things they're going to bring up to you, which will help grow your own faith and also help you learn better ways to talk to people about your faith. And then further down the road, if you get similar questions, you've already learned how to talk to people about that, and then you can talk to them again.
Yeah, the more you have to defend your faith, the better you get at it. And the more angles they come at, like basketball, the more angles they try to dunk on you or do a layup on you, the better you get blocking those. Yeah, Noah.
It's like she says, when your boss is giving you countless opportunities to stand up for your faith. And, I think of it like 1 Peter 1, the refining fire. And God doesn't put us in these situations to like watch us squirm, but because he knows going through that, it's not going to be fun. Your boss, poking fun at you at work and stuff, but coming out the other side, you're going to be stronger and more secure in your faith.
Yeah, you're going to be more secure in your faith. And I like what Noah said. He called this an opportunity to share your faith, shifting how you look at things. Anything else on the mean boss? We have some more. Oh, go for it. Oh, no. Go for it. There you go.
So, kind of taking it to the second part of that question of how would these trials be resolved when Jesus returns? The first thing that went through my mind when you asked that question was Jesus having his enemies and having the evil and anything that's not part of him be his footstool in the end. So Hebrews 10, verse 12 says, "But this man, after offering one
Yeah, Jesus will make his enemies his footstool. You don't have to take your vengeance, it's his. David prays, break out the teeth of my enemies, pull out their tongues. You can pray that about your boss, but also pray that he stops. But at some point, don't throw pearls before swine. Anyways, don't tell your boss. Never mind, we're good. Dealing with family tension or division. So you have some religious disagreement, you have some divorce, you have something going on in the family. How could we possibly find joy in steadfastness we get? How would this make you better? Yeah, Wes.
Part of sharing your faith is sharing your faith during challenging times. And when family relationships are on the line, you can learn in a lot better way how to share your faith in a way that your speech is seasoned with salt. Or you cannot, which is not good. But one of the bigger things I think is, as the tension grows, and maybe that person moves away from the Lord, you grow to appreciate the steadfastness of other people. And you see your church family as your family, and you appreciate their faithfulness. And that really helps you produce steadfastness.
Yeah, Wes talked about, I'm going to harp on that last point, seeing the church family as your true family. That can give you peace during this time. And that's why it's so important that we are making a loving church family. Not divided, we're here for each other because not everyone has a perfect family out there. You talked about faith. You can see it better in challenging times. When kids play with my watch, there's a light on it. See it? And when they turn it on, they do this. Why? Because you can see the light better in the dark. Same way with us. When we're in dark times, you can see the light better. Yeah, Ian.
So how do you keep steadfastness front and center? Because these and other various trials may instead have you produce frustration, produce weariness, produce avoidance, other such, I guess we can call them unpleasant emotions. But it's like, how do you keep the joy front and center, even if all these other emotions are also going to build up on that?
That's a great question. Ian asked, how do you keep steadfastness, improvement, growth, joy front and center when these trials are producing grief and anxiety and worry? How do we do that? Yeah.
I want to go back to Hebrews 12:2 again, just because that's something that I had been thinking of going through that First Thessalonians class. It's like, okay, was Jesus happy in that moment when he was walking with that cross on his back? No. Was he joyful of what that would cause for people? And so he is our example of endurance. Like, he's done it for us. It's possible. And so that's where we get it from, the fact that Jesus did it first. And the more that we study just how he endured that, like how he took it, the man he is, like, and we live by that, it will just permeate our subconscious and just become our authentic self, our identity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, even Jesus felt sadness and on his way to the cross. Maybe it's trials will produce these bad feelings, these unpleasant emotions. But like, what do we land on? What's our base? Okay, all this happening, but I have my joy in the Lord. Yeah, Amy.
Personally, going through things like this, it's a refining fire. It's refining. And so these trials, I'm burning parts of myself off that are not what God wants within me. And so going through like family tensions, I'm becoming a better person because I'm having to learn not to backbite, not to respond. And I'm learning
Yeah, just the reassurance that trials refine you and seeing other people as souls and treating them with love. Yes, I'm right.
I think one of the things we see connected with joy is the idea of service. So with Jesus, he was enduring that for the joy out of the service that he was providing for us. Same thing with Paul. Everything that he was going through, he constantly connects the joy he has with the service to God and the calling, but also to those he was spreading the word to and serving them. And we've talked on a couple points, and even before, sharing in Christ's suffering, and that feeling of being alone. You know, if we are focused on ourselves and even trying to have joy, but we're constantly looking inward of, I got to figure out how to have joy. I got to feel like sometimes focusing on others and focusing on ways to serve in those trials can produce that joy because it provides a connection. It provides an understanding. It's looking beyond yourself and thinking of others. And I think service and joy and endurance are things that are as I'm sitting here thinking, just about every scenario, there's a connection there.
Yeah, connecting our joy to service. We talked about focusing on God, rejoicing in God. Also, we can rejoice with others. Weep with those who weep, rejoice with those who rejoice. Service, doing things for other people, takes the focus off of you, off of your unpleasant emotions you might be experiencing that day. It seems paradoxical. Thanks. Paradoxical, which means like it seems contradictory. But if you're serving others and not thinking about yourself, you're actually doing yourself a favor and you'll probably feel better. But that shouldn't be your motive. Cool. Yeah.
I also think one of the important things is it's about preparation. If our joy is found in a close relationship with God, we cannot wait until we're in the midst of these lowest of lows to say, all right, now it's time for me and God to have a stronger relationship. You don't, when there's a grease fire, it's not the time to go to Walmart and buy a fire extinguisher. The preparation has to be done beforehand. And I think when you do that, you do not eliminate the bad feelings. That would be great. But what we're really trying to do is outshine them. We're trying to mitigate them, reduce them as much as we can, and have that joy be, if it's not front and center, at least it is the strong undercurrent. It's the thing that's in the background that sustains, even if we're in the midst of grief and pain.
Yeah, preparing for trials before they come will equip you to have better joy. Yes, ma'am.
Picking back off of his idea, I think that's why it's very essential for us as Christians to seek God daily and to pray. Prayer is important as well. Meditating on his word, as it says in Psalms 1, is very important. That's how we're going to get through these trials. And there's some beautiful examples in God's word on how so many people endure trials. And they rejoice that, I'm thinking about Peter. I think Peter in Acts chapter 4, like how they went through, they rejoiced that they went through, was going through persecution for God's sake. It's almost like they had the mindset of, I'm not even worthy to suffer for the Lord. So I don't know, just having, seeking God, meditating on his word is important in our Christian walk, because that's the only thing that's going to get us through. We're going to have times when we're going to be really, really down, but that's why we got to seek God and just focus on his ever-present help.
Yeah, meditating and praying will bring you joy. Great things. Good talk. The bell already rung, so you don't have to listen to me. Go get your kids. Oh, wait, one more thing. This is really good, actually. I thought of this. Would you want someone to only talk to you when they needed money from you? What kind of relationship would you have with that person? They only came to you when they needed money from you. Not a good relationship. Don't have that relationship with God. Boom.